Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion on international cooperation in the region. I have with me colleagues Darren Hunter from Italy, Giorgio Diallo from Dakar, and myself based in Cape Town. So in the spirit of international connection and interregional cooperation, we are putting the proof where the pudding is. So here we go. The topic, I think, is really important. We certainly have challenges in the region, and when we say region, let's agree that we mean the African region. And the challenges, by all accounts, will be increasing. There's no doubt about that. So I believe the value add that we will provide today to be focused on decision makers and policy influencers, that out of this discussion there will be some change in thinking and going, let's say, going into action. From my side, just briefly, I followed a naval career, part-time in total, probably about 20 odd years, full-time for 10 years, left the Navy operationally as a ship's captain, got involved in special forces work, attack diving, mine clearance, deep sea navigation and gunnery, and then transitioned into the commercial world. So currently I represent Airborne Technologies, an Austrian company. In Africa, we specialize in aerial sensing of various kinds, and I'm really exposed to regional cooperation and the lack thereof in many ways. So I'm talking from both experience and an ideal of what could and should be. May I ask my two colleagues to briefly introduce themselves? And then let's get underway. I'll focus the discussion and then we'll proceed. Giorgio, may I ask you to start, please? Just introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Giorgio Diallo, and I'm the CEO of African NGOs named Pan-Africa. I mean, Pan-Africa derived from Africa. Africa was, for 15 years, was one of the leading development organizations throughout Africa. In July 2020, they announced a sunset of US operation and decided to support, the formation in the continent of an African-based Senegalese headquartered organization named Pan-Africa. And I'm the inaugural CEO, and I'm very happy, to be in this panel because of, the security, cybersecurity is something, that is a big concern for our organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Darren, to you, please.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Darren Hunter. I'm in the U.S. Army. I'm a foreign area officer, and the region that I specialize in is sub-Saharan Africa. I've been doing that for about 5 years now, and it is really an honor for me to be here today because I know both Lutanzo and Gorgi have probably a lot more experience in the region than me, but I'm very much looking forward to this chance to participate today. And I do have to add as well, just a disclaimer, although I am in the Army, a foreign area officer, I am participating today personally. So any of my comments, views, or responses are in my personal capacity and don't represent the US government, AFRICOM, or my current organization. Thank you.
Great, gentlemen, thank you very much. Gents and ladies and gentlemen, in terms of international support to our region, to the African region, and I'm hearing the conference organizers, GRV, positioning this very carefully, that there is an intention of support rather than prescription or interruption, brackets, disruption. And in my experience, I've seen so many organizations and countries being interested to support and not finding traction, not getting entrance, to great frustration of people in need within the region, in countries, and also the international community who can and want to support. May I ask your comments in that respect first?
Yeah, at least for me, this is Darren. Yeah, I definitely agree. Just coming from an Army, the U.S. Military approach, I definitely can see that some of the countries we work with have multiple different either partners attempting to maybe sometimes provide similar but overlapping support. So I absolutely think it is important to ensure maybe we don't waste or replicate efforts, to find a way that it's more coherent and that it really gets after some of the needs that of some of our partners so they can tackle some of the important security challenges.
All right, let me just add something. And I think, the situation might be different from country to country. And one of the most important things I think, is based on the political willingness, in the country and the leadership that is expressed. And I think, for those countries, who already set up on the purpose and define a clear line and perspective on where they want to go, how they want to go there, and which type of, gap they need to fill. I think that's easier for them, to capture, those type of partnership they need to build a very strong plan for the future. And, I think this, start happening, in our countries, country like Senegal, when I'm sitting, I think, right now we have a global consensus on a strategic plan, for the coming 10 years on what, critical infrastructure, communication, cybersecurity should be in the country. And what is the gap that need to be filled, and which type of partnership we need, which type of collaboration we need, across sector. And I think that, we are starting to doing, big progress. Right now, I think it's the time to benchmark, the best practice around, those early action, just to make sure that, it's not just a matter of thinking about the country, but thinking about the region and the continent. Because, in this case, one secure country is not enough, but we need to secure the whole region. Yeah, that's what I want to add.
100% agree with you. What is clear that's emerging out of political will now is that as a region, we need to enhance or embrace the blue economy. Not just the blue economy of being a continent surrounded by oceans, but also a blue economy as in a new economic dispensation for Africa. So I'm very excited to hear that there is regional awareness between different countries. And I think that has to be mirrored into the international community who engages us. Probably easier to engage a country by person because we have networks and connections. It's difficult to engage Africa as a continent. Probably easier to engage regions, for example, the Gulf of Guinea, or the southern part of Africa, or far west Africa. My question now is, how do we strike the balance? How do we ask or advise people to strike the balance between the international community who has global awareness and experience? The international community deal with things, the same things that we in Africa deal with, they deal with in other parts of the world and have been doing so for many years. So they come with a wealth of experience and capability, technology. Behind that, of course, entrepreneurially driven product selling. So that makes it complex. And Africa has been, with respect, because I'm part of Africa, I am an African, we have been behind. We've been slow to adopt and catch up. We deal in a continent where we do not always have best practice, but we have local knowledge. and we're not stupid. We have different types of intelligences and wisdoms in this continent. So how do we strike the balance between respect for our local knowledge vis-a-vis the international community with its awareness and capability? How do we interchange with those?
I don't necessarily have a response, as that's a very difficult question, but I do think you make a great point. And just something that I wanted to highlight is that, yeah, that international, other partners coming from the outside certainly don't always, we might have something that we've attempted elsewhere, maybe in another region of the world, but absolutely it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the right prescription in other areas of the world, and certainly in Africa. A lot of times when we need to make sure that the assistance we're providing is married up with the needs of that government, and that we both want it, and not just one entity trying to push it more than the other, but that it's working side by side. And then finally that it gets at some of the root causes of the security issues, and is really looking into the future. So I just add that yeah, definitely needs to be very well integrated with partner countries, and it's definitely, I think, something we're seeing is difficult to do.
And I think that this is not a lack of respect to recognize that Africa is low resources, regarding security. That's a fact. But also I think that Africa is well positioning right now to define very clear guide and make sure that all this new infrastructure and idea will be built taking into consideration the risk around the continent. And in that we can learn from what happened to others. And as I told before, I think we can take the benefits of the experience that was developed in other continents and other places. My thinking is we need like a global guide. We need a guide. We need we need to be well guided, not only for country by country, but across all countries. If we have that clear vision, I think it won't be a problem to see which is the relevant partner that we need to set up a very strong security infrastructure in Africa.
Great, James, thank you for that. Now another two things pop into my head. The one is the old saying, 'n mens het 2 ore en 1 mond. A human being has 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen more than talk. And I'm sharing that metaphor because I think from the international community, when they come with their technology and awareness and experience and capability, once they've offered themselves, they should zip and open and listen to what the local struggle really is about. And the other way around, when the region, when Africans, when we've invited or when we've said, listen, we want to hear what you've got to say, the Africans also must learn to do this and open this, to hear what is actually available, what could be, what should be. And the second thought that is in my mind now is down in the southern eastern part of Africa, the Mozambican situation, in the north of Mozambique, the Cabo Delgado insurgency situation. I can share with you that I've been approaching various agencies and players, and with respect, not AFRICOM, Darren, for all sorts of reasons, but I've approached the Mozambican situation to offer aerial surveillance, to start observing what's going on in Cabo Delgado now for 5 years running. I hope the audience can see this 5 years running, and I've met with resistance and stonewalling and dead ends for 5 years. And I've predicted that there will be an escalation, that there is a war, and that people will get killed, other than their massive gas project being put on hold for God knows how long. And I'm sharing that with you as a real African situation right in our region. And the latest news is that, there's been some operational gains there, but tactically, strategically, that still remains a very, very difficult situation. What would your perspectives be, not just necessarily on Mozambique, but use that as an example of how do you unlock a difficult situation in the region, given our panel's focus?
Yeah, at least for me, the Mozambique situation, great example. And I do certainly think that would help their ability, being able to have more situational awareness of the developments. It certainly seems that more intelligence capabilities and, ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance would certainly help, at least in the short term, trying to achieve some objectives and get the situation under control. I definitely find that seems to be something in other countries, at least that I've dealt with, that is one of the top, I guess, priorities is being able to build those capacities, just a basic intelligence capacity and ISR platforms to be able to, just be able to take control of some of those situations. So I can't speak to specifically. I don't know too much on the peculiarities of what is being used by the Mozambican government in Cabo Delgado, but it certainly seems like that would help in the short and the near term, at least, to get the situation under control, and maybe address some of the other broader issues towards more of a longer term solution in Cabo Delgado.
Great, thanks, Darren. Monsieur?
Yeah, I think, I'll go in the same direction. I think, the building, this intelligence, this capacity, in countries, is key. And I think that, when you look at, all global cooperation around, security that go into that direction, in order to bring, idea people up, trying to build, the local capacity, trying to, in training of people, all right, development of internal infrastructure. And this is where we're going right now. And, on all this discussion I was involved in, talking about, security, this is the main orientation that our government, are taking right now. And I think, this is how, the collaboration can be, the collaboration can be critical. US Army, they have a lot of, training resources here, training facilities, in our countries, not only for Senegal, but, for all West Africa, talking about only West Africa. And I think this, will help to build, all this intelligence and this capacity that we need, to develop, this, to make sure that, we have the mean of, all this perspective that was defined, for security, for our countries.
I would just add one more thing for myself. At least in the U.S. military, we certainly recognize that military solutions are 100% not going to be the complete solution or the complete problem. As part of addressing some of the broader things, we definitely look to lead with an interagency, as we call a whole of government approach, using diplomacy and development, and then finally defense to help secure. But I just wanted to add that like Gorgie mentioned, we do have a number of programs across the continent. Like some of the larger, more visible ones, probably in Senegal as well, is cooperation with some of the units that deploy to peacekeeping missions to contribute to regional security. But it is 100% not lost on us that the other elements, especially development, really are some of the broader parts of the broader solution. And we recognize at least where we fit in, that it can't 100% be a military or security solution. But
yeah, I'm going to add that, you know, this is one of the critical things, and I mentioned it in a meeting, you know, maybe one month ago, something like that. That, you know, we need to be conscious about, you know, all stakeholders that might be involved, you know, in defining strategy. When it comes about security, it's not just about, you know, be restricted in one sector, because, you know, those sectors that can be affected are broad. And, you know, I can say, you know, the vulnerability doors, you know, can be, you know, several, we can have several, you know, vulnerability doors. That's why it's very important for any country to make sure that we have an exhaustive, you know, inventory of all partner that need to be involved, because security have many aspects, you know, and vulnerability can be, you know, have many manifestations. Looking about, for them, no-profit are more and more involved in collecting, you know, critical information on people than they work with, because the more and more we are using technology on our, you know, on the development sector, social sector, and this involves, you know, collecting critical information, important information from people that need to be secure, you know. And all those information need for countries, you know, to see way to build, you know, their own infrastructure, for example. I'm just, you know, pointing some of the example. We have a strategy that was defined in country, I told you, for the next 20 years, that was updated recently. And those type of things are, you know, new element that was added in this new, you know, what they call, you know, they call it Senegal Digital, you know, 2025, 2035. And they are the new element. So when it comes to security, people have to think outside the box, not just keeping between, you know, these traditional specialists that were dealing with security. That's a very big concern, because if you look at, you know, some of those oldest plans, you can find out that that was a security, all the security specialists, you know, things. Yeah. So it's time right now to open the door and, you know, make sure that, you know, we can have, you know, a broader collaboration across, you know, different sectors, including, you know, new emergency sector that need, you know, a type of security for the new work that they are doing.
You're triggering some many thoughts in my mind. The one that's coming up now is, and I'm speaking as an African, but you can see that I'm a Euro-African. So I have Caucasian ancestry, and I've lived and worked in many parts of the world other than Africa. So I have an acute awareness of we seem to think we have more time in Africa than the other parts of the world. And in Africa, we like the sound of our own voices. We like talking. And I come from a culture, even my white Euro-African culture, but also the Afro-African culture, we are storytellers. We like to tell stories, and there's a fascinating block of academia around storytelling, of how that engenders wisdom, by the way. But the point I'd like to make is that in a Eurocentric approach, people are much more time efficient, and they don't talk. They can talk a lot, but they don't talk as much as what I experience Africans to talk. And now my point is, I've seen so many grand strategies in Africa, and please, brother, not a reflection on Senegal at all here. Grand strategies, a lot of effort, consultants getting involved and so on. And, you know, when I speak from a military perspective, and by the way, I also have a medical background, there are two questions to ask. Just two. What is going on? What should we do about it? It's as simple as that. And now, linking to your last comment, the intelligence building, the information gathering on what is going on and converting that information, that data, into intelligence is so crucial. And I would suggest, connecting once again to your comments and also what Darren has said, we should find a ways of the international community interacting with us in the region, Africa, on what data do we gather, why do we gather it, and how do we convert that into intelligence. And we should learn to, on certain levels, open our intelligence gathering or our intelligence efforts interregionally. You know, the West African countries should look at the piracy situation together, not individually. And we should involve the international agencies to help us understand that intelligence requirement. I'm talking counter-piracy as an example now. So that brings me to the next question. We've been talking about intelligence, and I touched on ISR because that's my day job, and I have a passion for that. But my question to you, gentlemen, is give me your top 3 or 5 enablers, whatever they are, for our region and the international cooperation. Give me your top 3 or 5 enablers. They can be technology, organization, attitude, whatever you want to put in there. Giorgio, would you want to start?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the, I think my first point will be, you know, to make sure that we have a strong body, you know, across countries that is able to manage, you know, a global plan. You're right. Some of the big problem of Africa is efficiency, you know, efficiency. Sometimes, you know, we can, you know, build a very strong plan, very good plan, having big meeting at a high level meetings. But to make it operational, you know, it can take time. So we need to have that type of very efficient body, you know, to shake the tree, okay, and make things move. That's one of the things. The second thing is, you know, having this this timely share, I mean, trade information share. That's very important. If we have that body and have the citizen infrastructure, I think, you know, that that can help us to go forward. Let me give you an example. I know that for me, you know, from a dream, you know, the government of this country, they developed their own, you know, data house. And for all information that was sitting on cloud, right now, there is something that you're going to change on the law to make sure that it's hosted in country, because they, you know, they develop a stronger data house with full security, strong collaboration, you know, with partners around the world, and make sure that we are at the standard of, you know, all the data house existing, you know, around the globe. So this time, you know, all the sensitive information regarding this country right now will be hosted in country. And I think that if we have those type, if we have, why? Because we have a body, a structure that will put on place just to make sure that, you know, all these critical element that was identified can be, you know, make operational in a very short of time. So if you have the political willingness and we have the infrastructure, you know, you're right. In Africa, we're slow, but something is also changing in Africa. You know, all our new people regarding this new field, you know, are trained in Western, you know, college and university. So, and they develop, you know, their first experience, you know, in the North. So they come back in country, they come back in the continent with new vision. And they want things to change because they see, you know, how inefficiency on some, you know, action, you know, the damage that inefficiency, you know, of implementing plan, you know, have caused to this continent. So things are changing. So just to summarize, I don't, maybe I won't go for 5 points, but I think first of all, you know, we need to have a very strong, you know, body to manage this whole process. We need to have a very strong plan and make sure that, you know, the partnership can go across, you know, all sector, you know, and I think, you know, these 3 things can help us to go forward.
Great. Thank you, brother.
Hey, Gorgie, those are great points. Just for a few things from myself, I would definitely agree. I don't know if I'd place it at the very top, but I think within the top 3, just intelligence, as Lutanzo mentioned, and using that to be able to really shape and get a better picture of, as you both mentioned, some of the issues that are, you know, that are at stake. Just a few examples that come to my mind that I've read about or heard about or seen. I think of Ghana. in northern Ghana and the spread of violent extremist organizations, obviously beyond the Sahel, closer to some of the coastal West African states. And I've read a lot about, after the Accra initiative and just some of the information and intelligence sharing that's enabled, Ghana and neighbors, Burkina Faso, I believe Cote d'Ivoire, to be able to have a better approach and incorporating some maneuvers and exercises and trying to coalesce things around intelligence and being able to not let some of those actors be able to take advantage of those seams. So I absolutely, intelligence, another example, the multinational joint task force in the Lake Chad Basin. Definitely think that's a great example. I know there are certainly challenges, but just the different contributing countries being able to come together, share intelligence, and figure out ways to even do cross-border operations and work together definitely highlights the important role that refining intelligence capabilities and information and why that's one of probably one of the more important ones. Another one, just an enabler, I think in general, just civil military relations. I know at least in the US military, we have teams that help train and partner and work side by side with other countries in those aspects, just to make sure that, hey, when governments, militaries are undertaking operations, that it doesn't end up exacerbating the situation or alienating some of the populations, or even making it worse, pushing people if you come in with too heavy-handed of an approach, and just really just making sure that it is not exacerbating the situation, and that it's contributing to the governance in some of the areas farther away from capitals, and really taking into account some of the main things that that are lacking, or that those people might hold near and dear, that they see might be part of the broader issues. Aside, and again, these are all from an outsider perspective. I 100% recognize that I do not currently live in Africa, so I'm very aware that these are coming from an outsider's perspective. And I guess the last one, just at least from my perspective, logistics. At least in a military domain, a lot of countries that we've worked with, that's one of their primary things that they're concerned about, is especially being able to, a lot of countries provide large contingents to some of the UN peacekeeping operations or African Union peacekeeping operations, just ensuring that either the huge important gains or developments that they've made, that they're able to sustain those and keep those things going forward, and being able to just sustain their contingents, and making sure that new equipment and some of these new intelligence or assets that they get don't fall by the wayside in the midterm.
Gentlemen, I'm a bit concerned at this point. The organizers have only given us 60 minutes, and this conversation, I would like this conversation to actually be the conference. You guys are both making excellent points here, truly. I'm sort of digesting a bit, and sort of in my mind trying to chart an efficient way forward now with all that we're surfacing here. Maybe just on a lighter note, whilst I'm processing, Darren, I see there's a lot of agitation in Africa that AFRICOM should move its head office, its base into Africa. So you might not sit pretty in Italy for much longer. And I can share with people who don't know, the first time I dealt with American military as a naval man, went to some naval bases and discovered a wonderful institution called the PX Exchange, which is it's like a Walmart for the military inside a military base. And man, Darren, if you guys can get your base into Africa so I can visit your PX, I would be happy, guy.
That's funny. That's again, I'm participating personally, but that's funny. That's actually one of the questions I get asked quite frequently, and yeah, it's kind of funny. Like personally, I would love if it moved to Africa, but just because I enjoy working and living in Africa myself, but there's no plans to move the headquarters anywhere outside of where it is.
Okay, and that's under your heading of the original disclaimer. So no problem. I seem to sort of have a sense of going forward. Let me just check with you. How about us getting very specific for a while, and let's each think of one or two major threats to Africa, to the region currently. If you could distill through all your thoughts, and I know our brother also shared some cyber attack thoughts, and maybe that could surface, but what would each of us consider two, maybe three? In Africa, we talk about the big five animals, but okay, for the sake of economy, let's cite what we think are the biggest threats. Yeah, Darren, please go.
I'm happy to start off with just an initial maybe two. I think climate change is honestly probably going to be a major issue going forward. I just know, like, Lake Chad Basin as an example, just diminishing water supplies drives a number of different issues and security related issues and conflicts. Just disputes, between different groups of people trying to use the same land as people are displaced, as things happen. So I certainly think that it seems that, more climate change is forecast as we go forward. I also recognize that, Africa, from everything I read, tends to probably be affected disproportionately from other areas of the world that probably produce things that, change the climate. So it was there bearing the brunt. There's a lot of, I understand economies are, a lot of people make their living off agricultural means. So, I think that's something, I don't know if it's in the top, but I've read a bit about it. I think it's important. And then probably more militarily, just something I hear a lot from our partners that we work with is, the spread of violent extremist organizations, as I mentioned, in the Sahel. And then you mentioned Mozambique earlier, obviously northern Mozambique. I know it's a big concern, and just being able to address some of those issues in other regions. So those are two I'd start off with, and I'll hand it over to Gorgi to maybe give some of his insight.
Yeah, I think, everybody knows the situation of West Africa, this is a very vulnerable region, because of the how to call it, the violent extremist organization around. But you're right, this is the direct, for me, this is the direct effect, that generate insecurity in the sub-region, but it come far, as you said before. I think climate change is a big threat for Africa. And also one of the big threats for Africa is, bad governance. One of the big challenges will be good governance. Africa have a lot of resources. And as long as these resources are not equitably, shared between population, we're gonna keep having, these violent extremist groups. Somehow they can take the region as justification, but the basic justification is always economics. All those groups that think that, they are, they took them apart of, the sharing of all these big resources. Always we're gonna find out a way to use some violent means to claim their part. That's really what's happening. In the development field right now in most of our country, because we are very present in all these Sahel countries. We have an approach that we call conflict sensitive programming. Conflict sensitive programming will bring us to make sure that everywhere we need to deploy new program. We can just make sure that all those sensitive aspects are in our programmation, in our way to implement the program, to not exaggerate conflict between groups and so on. And Africa have this big, how to call it, characteristic that traditional group want to keep themselves, apart as a group. They want to keep their own identity, and and that's why, yeah, you're right. I think climate change is something that we need to pay it a lot of attention, but good governance also. And when we say good governance, we talk about democracy. We talk about, equitable management of, these natural resources throughout, Africa. And, also fighting against poverty. Sometimes, the gap between, in our countries, the gap between the richest and the poorest is so huge that you cannot imagine, You cannot imagine in the same country that people are so rich that they are riches that, even riches in, Western country. And you see some poor people for years, they are living in a unbelievable situation. Those type of gaps need to be filled, And as a development organization, sometimes, we have a lot of frustration as an African to see those type of things. Then in some countries, you have people that can pay, that have this, all these resources available. While at the same time, you have, plenty of people in the country that even, feed themselves. Or you have, people, dying for malnutrition. This type of injustice, is not something that can allow us, to be in peace. All right, that's what I want to add to the discussion.
Well, gentlemen, very well said. Truly, very well said. I almost feel that I can't contribute here because I think we're really covering the hot ones. Maybe I can share that in the city of Cape Town, we faced severe droughts a couple of years ago, and we were literally 5 days away from having to queue for water as a city. And I predicted all sorts of things. The one was that there would be a water war, that the gangs in Cape Town would start controlling water. A friend of mine, when the government started to ration the water here, the morning when he woke up, his quota of water was exhausted, and somebody had climbed over his wall during the night, put a pipe on his taps, and actually drained all his water away during the night. So people, it became very serious. And there's an old African saying that you do not understand the value of water until you have to carry it. And both in the social sense, carrying water over distance, I've had to do that as a boy. And in the military, there was always this thing of how much water do you carry instead of food or ammunition? And that was always a big thing. I mean, I would rather carry more water, less food, and more ammo. But okay, so I think linking to Darren's comment about global change, I think water is a major regional issue. And it's regional. We need to talk inter-country, and we need to talk with overseas international operators about this. I mean, in America, I saw a note the other day, Lake Mead is running dry in America. I mean, there are droughts in America that people didn't think would ever be possible. So, yeah. The other one linking to you, brother, is as Africans, we need to stop being selfish. We need to stop just controlling and gorging as much as what we can, because we are opening the gap too big. Mozambique, Cabo Delgado, there are a couple of strategic drivers in that region. One of them is neglected population, severe poverty, a huge gas project coming up that will not benefit everybody down to grassroots level. You can only have discontent and insurgency there for another 200 years. So once again, I'm back to that thing of attitude. We as Africans need to ask people to hear what we're dealing with. They need to do the ears mouthing of listening to us. But at the same time, I think Africa needs to have a serious attitude change. How do we leave a better planet for our children's children than what we've got currently. And within that, then cascaded down are the insurgencies, the power grabbing, the atrocities, the military risks, the political instability of the region, all that stuff. Any other thoughts whilst I'm gathering mine?
No, just the aspect on the water. I mean, yeah, a bunch of examples just come to mind. I mean, just first one is the Ethiopia, the dam, the Grand Renaissance Dam, just how that, just water is at the heart of that. Just something so seemingly so simple, but it is obviously so high stakes for so many people involved. That's at least on the water and that.
No, I think, globally, no, you're right. You're right. And I think that things need to change in Africa. Things need to change. In so many domains, we need to be more inclusive, We have to be more inclusive. That's, and I think, this is the key for global security in Africa. Just make sure that nobody is, left apart, When big resources are controlled by a minority, that generate, a lot of frustration. And this frustration, might come to be violent, might become very violent, That's why, I mean, that's something key. The second thing is, we have no time to lose in Africa. We have no time to lose now, because of all the intelligence available in the continent, all the new tech, the mean and new technology available around the world that we can, have available for us. There is no way right now to spend a year in meetings, high-level meetings, intermediate meetings, low-level meetings, to talk about something that could be realized in the same time. Things need to go fast. And once more, and I think it's critical for the future of this continent to make sure that people focus on democracy and good governance. Is critical, because right now we are in the century of democratization of information. Everybody is aware about what's happening in any corner of the world, and people will not keep accepting. We need to keep accepting some of the behavior from those leaders, from their leaders. And this need to change. And you can see it around the continent. More and more you have some activists, and more and more the reaction of people, become more and more violence, Actually, now you're going to take the example of Senegal. It's a very peaceful country, but in mass you have these youth people. Africa is young. Africa is young. And this youth population can be a potential, to develop something good. But that can be also a big threat for people governing this continent, That's why I say good governance is something key that we need to focus on. If we want to keep, building a very safe continent, we have to be more transparent in the way to manage, the resources available in the continent. That's something that people are claiming. Some of the behavior from the leaders will not longer be accepted by the continent. That's what happened. That's what we see, as an organization on the field, working with the government, with a host government to try to build, new feature, bright feature. That's what we see, and that will be my advice. We need to focus on that. That's why democracy will not talk enough about democracy and good governance. That's something key. Good governance bring transparency, decrease corruption, around our countries. And that's something that, caused a lot of damage to the continent for years and years and years. And some of these violent reactions that we can see somehow in, some country come from, those are the indirect effects, that produce this violence group that we can see around sometimes. Using the religion as a justification for the action. But honestly, basically the action, the real reason is not the religion. That comes from frustration, economic frustration, or social frustration. That's why we NGO are conscious that we are very conscious that we need to keep working on that field. Just make sure that we can help sitting on the last mile, we can help to make sure that there is an equitable repartition of resources, owned by countries. Thank you very much.
Great comments. And one other.
No, Darren, go ahead.
No, I really appreciated the comments, and I just something as he was speaking, I was thinking of just, he mentioned, everyone around the world know, it's easier for people to know what's going on. Just made me think of something that, my country we struggle with right now, as well as I know multiple other countries struggle with, is, and it kind of plays into what he was saying, is just security forces, obviously training and, following the rules themselves. In the US, there's all kinds of, everyone has a phone nowadays, everyone can share things on social media. And, when people don't act appropriately, it obviously makes the situation difficult. And just, training with the security forces and in Africa as well. Just, there's all kinds of instances, people sharing videos on social media. So it's I think it's extremely important to play into that good governance piece, that, security forces are accountable. And, just because anyone now can share a video, and it just really shows how important it is, how something small like that can, like he said, start a movement or incite people to action. So in the security realm, at least, focusing on just kind of, baseline training and, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of civil military relations.
Yeah, Darren, guys, all the input that's happening here, I should ask GRV to patch us into the UN. Really, I think the UN must hear this, and I hope that they talk like this. I'm so reminded of good governance, and good governance. The word governance, I see it as a capability above governing. Governing is of a country of people. Governance is an ethical norm that holds you against a higher vision or a higher norm of what could and should be for sustainability. For one of my consulting passions is the concept of thriving, flourishing. How do you flourish as a person, as an organization, as a region, as a continent, and governance to me sits on the level of how do we flourish as a region or a continent, and then I think the power, the potency of social media is tremendous. Can you imagine? Let me step one back. In my consulting life, a question that I ask organizations when we talk about thriving is, formulate me one question with which you can evaluate an organization, after, and that goes for a government, that goes for a country. What is the one question that you could ask? And arguably all this way and way. So the question that I consider favorite is, how much do I love my government? Love. Not like, not respect, not tolerate, not hate. Love, which is that word that I reserve for people close to me, for children, for life, for fresh water, that special word. So can you imagine if we could find ways of governance translated into governing and security and all those words, and then people on social media can start saying, I love my continent because this is what we do there. I love my government because they spoke to that government and we have water. We will find a way of staying alive. I'm trying to be qualitative here rather than emotional, and balance the qualitative with the quantitative here of the potency of social media in all of this. Some thoughts, some other ideas?
Darren, you want to say something?
Oh no, I just the social media. I know, yeah. I think the only thing I'd add is that I mean, it's sir. I think it's just not. It's not specific just to Africa, but I mean, as I mentioned, the U.S., my country as well. I mean, there's all kinds of recurring issues in terms of security forces not acting appropriately and inspiring or causing, for good reason, people to be frustrated with how their security services act or police act. So yeah, I think it just really shines a light on the importance of police security services. Just as Lutanzo I think mentioned, kind of acting to a kind of being responsible to kind of a higher cause and really serving and being accountable, and just how much more important that is going forward in the future.
No, and David, I'm really agree. I'm agree about this, the law, the adhesion of people. I think good governance comes first of all from the adhesion of administrative people. Me, I'm doing this development work for 26 years, and despite the fact that in some of the community they're still living in very poor condition, but they are aware on what's going on around the world. That was not the case when I started this business. There was a time where people are not informed about, they're not informed about nothing. When you go in a mission in the field, you are the one who bring the fresh information. But right now people are they're aware on what's going on, and they know, and they have their own judgment of the way that their country are managed. And that's why this is the change that social media has bring on the world. There is a big democratization of information, and you're right. And this can be used to help our country to go forward, but it can be very dangerous also for people governing our countries. That can be very dangerous. Yeah. So really, social media, they definitely change the way we are living, and it should also change the way that all our countries are governed. As an African, I have a lot of frustration because I see I travel a lot around different continents, different countries, and I see this huge potential that we have in these continents, but I didn't see a result that is equivalent to that potential. We have a lot to do in Africa, and we can do, as long as we have strong and good leadership. I think we can let things move fast, and I think the youth people of Africa are claiming for that, and it will happen. It can be happen in peace, and that's what we want, but somehow it will happen.
Gentlemen, in good project management terms, I need to watch time. We are bringing in, I believe, this panel discussion way above quality expectations. So I thank you deeply for that. May I ask just a closing comment or statement from each of us, and then I'm going to wrap the discussion. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, gentlemen, for me at least, all you reviewing, Lutanzo and Gorgi, it was a very insightful discussion today. Thank you for inviting me. I really like the Lutanzo, I think the analogy you made about we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, at least being not in Africa, but I am very passionate about working for, and through and with countries in Africa. That is not lost on me, and I completely recognize how important that is to listen, as we try to help and be part of the solution and work alongside our partners and allies. Thank you again for this opportunity. Looking forward to maybe taking some questions, I believe, after this.
So David, thank you very much. Darren, thank you very much. It was my pleasure to share, this panel with you. And I want to thank, JB Global, for initiating also this event. And I think, security is something very important and critical for Africa, for Africa. We cannot build, in an insecure place, So security should always be unbound on our reflection. And, this is a good initiative to open this topic to various sectors, to make sure that we can diversify those people talking on security, because everybody, have his own role to play, in security. Now, security is not just for, specialists, it's for everybody. Everybody have something to bring, to build a very safe continent. And Africa have a lot to learn from others, continent. We need to keep gathering the best practice around the world and make sure that this continent can take advantage of that. So to JV Global, thank you very much for initiating this panel. And once again, David and Doreen, it was my pleasure to share this panel with you. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you. I believe we've succeeded in showing the world, showing the stakeholders and the role players that there are people like us who have an awareness and who have an interest to contribute and have an interest to hear. And we share that. That spirit is what I'd like this conversation to be about, to the stakeholders and to the ISA conference in general. So I thank you very much. See you at the conference next week. All the best.